A very beautiful Monday morning to you, and a warm welcome to the press, reaching you live from the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Olamide Alhassan, and apologies for the late start. I hope you had a great weekend. Quite a number of stories that made it to the front page of our national dailies, but we'll get to tell you more about that eventually. But first, you know how we do it on the press. First of all, go to the weather forecast to tell you what the weather is going to be like today, or what to expect as you prepare to step out, or as you go out, or as you go about your daily activities. And afterwards, we bring you what made it to the front page of our national dailies. Most of the things that happened over the weekend always hits the front page of the papers first thing on Monday mornings. And afterwards, we bring in guests who's going to analyze most of the top stories that we're going to be reading out to you this morning. And don't also forget the segment where our phone line to be open for you to call in and let your contributions be heard by the whole country. So right about now, let's begin with the weather forecast so you know how best to get your day started, or how best to continue the day that you started already. So you know I love to start from the core north. In Kano State this morning, it says 23 degrees Celsius on the average. It's mostly cloudy. The highest is at 33 degrees Celsius and the lowest is at 22 degrees Celsius, and partly cloudy conditions are expected around 9 a.m. as wind gusts are up to 10 km per hour today in Kano. And from Kano State now we head on to Kaduna. Kaduna says on the average about 22 degrees Celsius. It's mostly cloudy. The highest is at 30 degrees Celsius and the lowest is at 21 degrees Celsius, and partly cloudy conditions are expected around 11 a.m. as wind gusts are up to 6 km per hour in Kaduna. And from Kaduna now to Imo State. Imo State says on the average about 23 degrees Celsius. It's mostly cloudy. The highest is at 31 degrees Celsius and the lowest is at 22 degrees Celsius, and rainy conditions are expected around 5 p.m. as wind gusts are up to 7 km per hour in Imo State. And from Imo now to Port Harcourt. Port Harcourt says 24 degrees Celsius. On the average, it's mostly cloudy. The highest is at 30 degrees Celsius and the lowest is at 23 degrees Celsius. And it says rainy conditions are expected around 2 p.m. as wind gusts are up to 6 km per hour right there. And now back to the federal capital. To the commercial nerve center of Nigeria, Eko Onibaje, Lagos State. Lagos State says on the average about 25 degrees Celsius. It's mostly cloudy. The highest is at 29 degrees Celsius and the lowest is at 24 degrees Celsius, and partly cloudy conditions are expected around 9 a.m. as wind gusts are up to 7 km per hour. And now to the Federal Capital Territory, where you're currently watching us from right about now. It says on the average about 22 degrees Celsius. It's cloudy. The highest is at 30 degrees Celsius and the lowest is at 21 degrees Celsius, and rainy conditions are expected around 3 p.m. as wind gusts are up to 6 km per hour. That's it for the Federal Capital Territory in Abuja, and that's it for the weather forecast. Do well to take the necessary precautions and get your day started. The earlier the better. And now let's see what our national dailies have in store for us. Okay, so to start this day, we'll begin with This Day newspaper. And on the front page of This Day, on this day, the 13th day of October 2025, the boldest story on the front page of This Day newspaper says, FG threatens no work, no pay as ASUU begins 2-week warning ultimate strike today. I'll take that again. FG threatens no work, no pay as ASUU begins 2-week warning strike today. Right after the story says, Alausa says lecturers not interested in keeping students in class, reviews government has demonstrated good faith, met almost all demands, but union intransigent. And now Konua Namda insists their members not joining strike. You want to find out more details of that? You pick up a copy of the This Day newspaper for more details. And now while they're doing disposed, as Cardoso leads delegation to World Bank IMF meet in DC. That's going to be an interesting one. I want to keep close tabs on that for you and give you all of the details of that meeting. And now ENI reports 20%, ENI reports 20% crude output rise in Aberfield, Lords NUPRC's reforms, and that's on the front page for your read as well. Arise News Channel will be consoled over Madragu with improved security and healthcare system, and that's on the front page for your read this morning. Now TCN, foreign funding for power transmission hits $1.3 billion in 5 years amid frequent outages. That's on the front page for your read this morning. Well, quite scanty stories on the front page. I'll let you pick a copy of this day newspaper to find out more details as we head on to the Vanguard. Now, Vanguard says, the bolder story on the front page of Vanguard says, non-oil exports. Local investors lose out of 4.8 trillion naira boom. Rider says foreign rivals wielding cheap petrol, sidestepping export rules, outmuscle local operators. Stakeholders decry funding crisis, port bottlenecks, and analysts demand shifts in value addition, says NEPC reacts. And that's on the front page for your read this morning. You find more details of that on page 25. 100 billion naira loan sparks war of words between Alia Autumn in Benue. And that's on page 13. Zenith Bank declares 51.3 billion naira interim dividend payout. That's on page 25 as well for your read. ASUU shuns federal government, insists on strike over unresolved demands. How ASUU strike averted talks on 2009 agreement, says federal government vows to enforce no work, no pay policy. And that's on the front page for your read this morning. You can't fight drugs by freeing traffickers. ADC slams Tinubu, and that's on page 11. Renowned activist Abiodun Aremu killed by hit and run driver. That's on page 6. State regulators ask NAS to halt central gaming bill. That's on page 43 for your read this morning. U.S. Unitary debate sparked by FG's failures, says Oluwepo Hashim. And that's on the front page. It says government prefers 2027 politics to national survival. And that's on page 8 for your read this morning. Prostate. Lagos hospital performs first Urolift surgery in Nigeria. And that's on page 9 for your read this morning. Well, that's it on the front page of the Vanguard. The picture story you see is of President Tinubu during his arrival in Rome. Well, that's it on the front page of the Vanguard. And now let's head on to another paper that we have for you. And up next is The Nation. Now, the front page of The Nation newspaper, the bolder story says federal government to ASUU. Strike may trigger no work, no pay rule. That's on the front page of The Nation. Federal government to ASUU. Strike may trigger no work, no pay rule. That's on the front page for your read this morning. Still on the front page of The Nation, why Tinubu should be in office till 2031 by Umahi. Zenith Bank pays 51.3 billion naira interim dividend. Full year outlook strong. Businessman excretes 127 cocaine wraps. Dangote Cement begins operations in Côte d'Ivoire with 3.0 million metric tons. And that's on page 5. Now, Finance Minister Edun didn't suffer a stroke, says presidency, and that's on page 2. Stock markets return hits 27 trillion naira on earnings and expectations, and that's on the front page. Rumpus over introduction of lottery bill in House of Reps after Supreme Court judgment, and that's on page 5 for your read this morning. And now, we've made comprehensive offers. That's the writer to the story. A federal government to ASUU strike may trigger no work, no pay rule. Minister says we've made comprehensive offers. Strike from today inevitable, says lecturers. Well, that's it on the front page of The Nation newspaper. And now let's see what other papers have in store. Up next is First Daily. First Daily says ASUU declares 2-week strike. That's on the front page of First Daily. FG wants no work, no pay amid ongoing disputes. Now, Atiku slams Tinubu over presidential pardon, once against rewarding corruption under guise of mercy. Sowore insists on October 20th march to Aso Rock for Nnamdi Kanu's release. Sowore insists on October 20th march to Aso Rock for Nnamdi Kanu's release, and that's on the front page. Now, FAN nabs travelers with undeclared millions at Lagos Airport, and that's on the front page. IGP Egbetokun removes FCT police chief after Showore's outcry. Serap urges new INEC nominee Amukpiton to tackle electoral offences reform system. Timi Frank urges Tinubu to sack service chiefs amid worsening insecurity. Cameroon decides 92-year-old Biya eyes fresh mandates after 4 decades in power. That's on the front page for your read this morning. And our Delta APC backs Tinubu Owerri for 2027. That's on the front page for your read this morning. And now let's take a look at other papers that we have for you today. Moving on, we have the Leadership coming up next. Leadership newspaper says government says no work, no pay as varsity lecturers begin strike. And that's on page 4. Falana Adegboruwa, others back Osinbajo's call for judicial reform. That's on page 4. U.S. genocide debates sparked by federal government failures, says Gbenga Hashim. Says government prefers 2027 politics to national survival. And that's on page 24. 152.4 trillion naira debt. Reduced borrowing, experts caution federal government. And that's on the front page. Polaris Bank wins digital MSMEs awards for 5th consecutive year. And that's on page 23. Presidency confirms Edun's illness as Cardoso leads delegation to World Bank IMF meetings. And that's on page 22. Zenith Bank's 51.3 billion naira interim dividend payout signals strong full-year outlook. And that's on page 22. Tinubu's pardon of convicted drug peddlers, others reckless, says ADC and Atiku, and that's on page 4. HQ the Nasser attack, says police, and that's on the front page for your read this morning. Well, that's it for the front page of the Leadership, and now let's see what the Punch has in store for us. Let's take some punchy headlines. On the front page of the Punch newspaper this morning, it says ASU rejects federal government's proposal, begins 2-week strike today. ASU rejects federal government's proposal, begins 2-week strike today. Union snubs government peace talks over unpaid arrears. Others insist on industrial action. Federal government says no work, no pay. NANS commences move to resolve lingering crisis. That's on the front page for your read this morning. And our Edu recovering, no plans for replacement, says presidency, and that's on page 18. Naira hits 10-month high on strong FX inflows. That's on the front page. Now 2027, no impact with Jonathan, says no pact, I beg your pardon. 2027, no pact with Jonathan, says Obi, and that's on page 41. FUBARA retains 8 commissioners, prepares fresh nominees list, and that's on page 40 for your read this morning. And now we have Tinubu under fire over presidential pardon for drug offenders, and that's on page 18 for your read this morning. And we have more Kwara abductees rescued as military sustains pressure on bandits, and that's on page 40. Killings, Adeleke denies hiding Amotekun commander, blast APC, and that's on page 41. 2 arrested over mourner's death at Osun funeral party. And that's on page 5 for your read as well. And now Polaris Bank shines at 2025 Bafi Awards. That's on page 32 for your read this morning. Well, that's it on the front page of the Punch newspaper. And now let's see what the Matrix has in store. Now over to the Matrix newspaper this morning. The Matrix says Atiku ADC slam Tinubu over reckless in court use of presidential pardon. President's action undermines justice, emboldens criminality, says ex-VP. Decisions a national disgrace, undermines Nigeria's anti-drug campaign, damages country's international image. I'll take that again. Decisions a national disgrace, undermines Nigeria's anti-drug campaign, damages country's international image, says ADC. That's on the front page of the Daily Monitor, I beg your pardon. And still on the Daily Monitor for this morning, it says unmet demands, FG tackles ASU over 2-week warning strike, threatens varsity union with no work no pay policy. Why we declared industrial action, says ASU. And our presidency not yet southeastern in 2027, says Umahi. Says claims of marginalization by southeast under Tinubu political. And that's on the front page. Now, make prosecuting electoral crimes top priority, Serap tells INEC chair nominee Amupiton, and that's on page 6. Dangote Cement commissions 100 billion CFA franchise cement plant in Côte d'Ivoire, and that's on page 4. Cardoso replaces Edu as Nigeria's lead at WBIMF meeting. Now treats gunshot victims before police report. NAD NMCN urge hospitals, and that's on page 5 for your read this morning. And now back to the front page of the Matrix newspaper. It says strike. FG ASU head for showdown. Strike. FG ASU head for showdown. 14-day notice lapsed without substantial response from federal government, says ASU. No work, no pay. Federal government wants lecturers. Urge ASU to shelve strike in the interest of students. Now, with Edu indisposed, Cardoso leads Nigeria's team to World Bank IMF meeting. Mass pardon, Tinubu under fire. Reckless use of pardon undermines justice and emboldens criminality, says Atiku. ADC, Tinubu, APC redefining standard of morality in our country. And that's on page 3. INEC chairmanship, Serap urges Amupiton to prioritize ending impunity for electoral offences, and that's on page 9 for your read. Now wait till 2031 for presidency, Umahi tells Southeast, and that's on page 2. Now CPPE, Naira depreciation, inflation reduced gains of Nigeria's fiscal tax reform, and that's on page 2. Tiwa Savage opens up in 2021 salon clash with Shay Shay, and that's on page 22 for your read. War is over in Gaza. Trump declares flies to Israel for release of hostages, and that's on page 9. 2026 World Cup. Ghana clinched sport as Nigeria hope for a miracle. Hope indeed. Well, we just hope for something better. We hope that we're really qualified for this. Anyways, let's move on to other papers that we have for you. And now on the front page of the Daily Trust, the newspaper, they say you can trust. It says strike, no work, no pay. FG warns ASU. Presidency confirms Edu's illness, and that's on page 7. Bakare upbeats as Cameroonians elect president, and that's on page 31. Flood kills 236 persons in 27 states, including FCT. And that's on the front page. Now, 3 more Katsina local government areas sign peace pacts with bandits, and that's on page 3. Peace pacts, indeed. Now, Kano issues alert over rising Lassa fever risk, and that's on page 41. Zenith Bank pays 51.3 billion naira interim dividend. Objections over pardon for grave offenders, and that's on the front page for your read this morning. One more to go on the front page of The Guardian this morning. It says prerogative of mercy, criticisms, outrage, suspicion. That's on the front page of The Guardian. Criticisms, outrage, suspicion trail president's pardon of 175. Now, security concerns. Tinubu, NSA, NIA boss join meeting in Rome, and that's on page 7. FG revokes Mararaba Kefi road contract over negligence and faulty design. Maraba and Kefi road contract over negligence and faulty design. Psychology's battle blames lifestyle others for emotional instability amongst youth. Presidency Sultan orders commit to friendly girl-child policies. Mbas exits ends PDP stake dominance in Southeast. Now, Zenith Bank hopeful for full-year performance pays 51.3 billion naira dividend, and that's on page 7 for your read this morning. The last on my desk is the Nigerian Tribune. FG threatens no work, no pay as ASU declares 2-week strike, and that's on page 3 for your read this morning. INEC chairman, 12 hurdles Amupiton may face, and that's on the front page. Presidency confirms Edu's ill health. CBN governor leads Nigeria's delegation to World Bank IMF meeting, and that's on page 4. Zenith Bank rewards shareholders with 1.25 thousand interim dividend. Set stage for record full-year returns, and that's on page 6. Polaris Bank dominates 2025 BAFI Awards. Wins Digital Bank Best MSME Bank for 5th consecutive year, and that's on page 6. Now Nigerians search for alternatives over scarcity of cooking gas. And that's on page 5. I've almost never ever heard about scarcity of cooking gas in my entire life up until now. What's going on? Well, I just hope that it all gets better. All right, that's it on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, and that's it on the front page of our national dailies. Time now for a quick break. When we return, we'll be joined by a guest for analysis of most of the top stories read out to you. And don't also forget that that's a segment where our phone lines will be open for you to call in and join the conversation. We'll be right back. Do stay with us. Welcome back, viewers, and our phone lines are now open for you to join the conversation as it progresses this morning. Mr. Osaritin, you were talking about how it's looking like if the demands are being met, why would ASUU want to go on strike?
Yes.
But the question is, now federal government has spoken. They said if you choose to go on this strike, even after your demands are being met, it will mean that you would get a situation of no work, no pay. Is that the best response in this kind of state? Because we've seen that happen before. We've seen situations where, when ASUU is ready to go on strike, they can be very, very adamant. And our youth are the one that actually bear the brunt. And we know what this leads to. Sometimes a spike in crime rates. Lots of issues. What do you make of this?
Tell me of any strike that ASUU has undertaken where the no work, no pay policy actually stood. It can only be temporary at the time where the strike was on, and then the protesting organization under the federal government service will be told no work, no pay. And when that happens, during that period, they may not get their pay. What they only do is accumulate this money and pay them back to them in bulk when they finally resolve. So that is not the best approach to handle the matter. Of course, we do understand that the minister is indeed agitated over the issue for the fact that we've made this effort, and we expect you to respond to the effort and the call of the strike. But unfortunately, whatever the mix-up is between the federal government and the ASUU and the body in terms of delivery or alert or the rest of it, is one that ASUU may also be considered, and if it does not, it may be a ploy by the federal government telling them that no, we have done this, and yet though it is just the details that we need to make sure we have this thing sent out to you. Now, in trying to make sure that they have the credibility of their association within their members, they are doing this. But again, what is important for us all, the overriding public interest, is to ensure that the children do not suffer from this.
How possible is that?
The children do not suffer from this, and that will mean that all the processes to ensure that this whole thing is resolved within the next 2 days between ASUU and the federal government should be done, so that the children can return back to their classrooms, get their teachings, and then they will be able to finish up their semester exam semester at the appropriate time, as at when due. Else, we will end up causing pains, not just on the students who may have read sufficiently for a particular for their courses, and then they have reasons to now stay off, and then while they are off, they are not doing any other thing. They are just doing an anticipated wait for a return to school, and time will be lost on their side. For the lecturers, they've already had their done, and they are the one working, and they are the ones sitting at home and waiting for these children. So for them, they have nothing much to lose. It is indeed very unfortunate that this kind of thing is still being held of in 2025. The mien of the president before he came to power is one that is believed to have been a champion of Democrat, a champion of due process, a champion of welfare of the welfare of the Nigerian people. This kind of action under his time, of course, does not speak well of him. It gives an impression that it is all facade because of the desire to become the president of the nation, and that is just not what we want in a president. We want something proactive.
Okay, but then there's been no precedent who has never experienced ASUU strike. And most of the time, part of the conversations are always about the 2009 agreement, from one presidency to the other. But it doesn't seem like something that's going to end anytime soon. In fact, there is no landmark, or there's no blueprint on ground that by 2028 or 2029, we're not going to have another ASUU strike talking about 2009 agreement. There is no indication whatsoever that in 2034, for example, we're not still going to have conversation over 2009 agreement. But how do you think ASUU can resolve this? Because it means that different governments, different conversations every single day, whoever had the 2009 agreement with the federal government, the power has been changing. And it may seem like that's no longer a priority. Don't you think they should begin to come back to the table and make a fresh agreement and stop going back to those conversations that probably was signed by another person? And these ones are probably not taking cognizance of.
No, Madam Olamide, I think you need to understand that government is continuum. So whether it was signed by a former, a different person, but that person was occupying the office of the president at the time. Course. And that office remains the office of the president that should inherit responsibility, so inherit assets and liabilities.
Of course.
When whoever comes into the office comes to the office. That is why you have several assistants. That's why you have professionals in all of these areas to look into this matter, look at the nitty-gritty, and then be able to give you proper advice on it. Now, why do we have the TED fund? This whole thing is about the insincerity of those who are operating the system. The TED fund is to be able to provide some of these support, as it were, to the educational sector, the funding of the infrastructure, as it were. Why are they still having this challenge? What stopped them from focusing on this institution? Where the matching fund needed to be done? These universities should be able from their internal revenue raise sufficient funding for this kind of project, so that by the time we get maybe 10-15 years from now, we can have it, as we were talking about the blueprint. They should be able to come together and sit down and say, look, I'm having a 4-year term. In this 4-year term, as a new government comes, in this 4-year term, this is the much I can be able to achieve in this. That will reduce whatever the challenge or burdens are of the world. If it's reduced by 20%, we know we have 80% left for the next government. When the next 4 years come again, you further negotiate. I'm sure by 10-15 years we would have been done with all of this. We must understand that when we begin to make the quality of education less for our children, it is the nation that suffers. All those who are running out of the country are running out, upscaling their skills, as it were, wherever they go, and they provide services in that country. They provide their intelligence for that country. They provide their energy for that country, and these countries appear to be getting better while we are here struggling over one matter for over 10 years. That is not something that should be done.
It's just so heartbreaking, because honestly, just like you said, oh, it's a government, so it means that every single time you inherit both the assets and including the liability. But it may seem as though the individuals behind the power, or the personalities behind the power, seem oblivious of most of these things, and they do not work in agreement with these things. I think it boils down to the different changes that come from different government bodies.
I don't think they're oblivious of those things. I just think it's a matter of sincerity, a matter of priority. How can you run a nation without prioritizing your educational sector?
Would you think that? Would you say
because
that?
The manpower you require to keep the nation sustainably growing is in the education sector.
But would you say that this kind of government does not prioritize education after making arrangement for a student loan? Would you categorize them as such?
Well, you cannot totally say they did not prioritize education. However, this is also an integral part of that educational advancement. So if you are doing one end and you are not supporting the other end, that will provide the necessary buffer for the holistic advancement of the educational sector. What would you want one to say in that kind of situation? So let us not just be speaking about the student loan is a very laudable achievement of this government, and it is one of its kind in our developmental history. However, It is important that that loan, let it also not waste in the hand of children who have collected it to live on it for a particular period. And unfortunately for these kids, you now have a strike. They are now what they call tamper with that funding they would have gotten for their upkeep. It is not a good thing at all. So the government should make this matter an issue of priority and get back to the table and have this thing sorted so that the children can be back to school. It is a serious blow on parents, on the economy of many parents, particularly in today's Nigeria, where things are indeed very tough for every family.
So that's just the government. What about ASUU? What are you saying to them?
ASUU has a responsibility also to ensure that Nigerian children are given the best. And it's a part of that responsibility may be why they are doing what they are doing. But why they do it, they should know that this suffering that they are making out to the Nigerian children has a way. It affects the psyche of the children. It affects their mental state. Because for children who have gone to school with the hope of rounding up a particular session, rounding up a particular what they call part of their course within a particular term, and then not being able to have that done, it's something very serious and negative. It speaks also to the quality of the lecture that they are offering to these children.
You know, most of the things that we export the most is, most of the time, most of our students go out for academics because of the kind of things that we experience in Nigeria. It's just so unfortunate that we're in a country where ASUU strike is...
It's a common thing.
Yes, a common thing.
Where commonplace.
Everybody who has passed through an institution in Nigeria that is not a private institution will tell you, I have had my fair share of ASUU strike. I don't think there's anyone who would say I never did. Most people have had the experience of their fair share of ASUU strike. Yet, this is a country where if you're looking for a job, there's a peg for your age limits that you're supposed to have been a graduate. And your
some of this delay would have come from this.
Exactly. You have the experience has to be there, the age limit has to be there. In fact, you're supposed to be under 25 to have achieved a lot of things. Yet, today there's strike, tomorrow there's this, next tomorrow there's this. In fact, there's never a full gateway that when you say you're going into the institution in 2025, you're going to be graduating in 2029. There is no guarantee. Because you know that in the next 2 days, in the next 2 months, ASUU may decide we're going on a strike. And ASUU strike could last for as long as 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, 2 months.
While I'm not supporting the strike, to say that ASUU may decide they'll go on strike is as if it is just being done indiscriminately. There is an issue. The government must, I keep hammering the government must ensure that it sees those ones that it thinks are for the long term and leave them for the long term. Those ones that are for the short term and get them done with. It is critical. It is important to have all of these things done so that the school session will run as it should run.
All right. We look forward to better days, and we just hope that this strike will be shelved quickly so our students can be back in school. Because the truth is, no parent wants to see their children home when everything is already put in place for them to be back running through the academic session. Some are even waiting for admissions already, waiting to resume. And I've seen situations where they have to mix even another year's academic session with another year in order to be able to, meet up. But that's not even encouraging. It doesn't speak well of our nation. Now let's take a look at another case that the president has been under fire for, which is a presidential pardon. Now there are conversations that I don't want to go political first. So let's look at it ethically. Is it all right for the president to actually give presidential pardon to people serving terms? Is
very, very normal.
Okay.
It is for every nation. We know, yes, there are persons who may have committed one crime or the other, or who would have been found to be deviant in society. And so in order to extract penitence, as it were, from them, such persons are now taken through the judicial process, and then they get through the justice system, which require that they should be kept in prisons or in prison for a certain period of time to be able to extract that level of penitence from them. During such period, for some, there are reviews that are carried out to see their level of sense of contrition over the matter for which they have been involved. And the state can grant pardon to such persons or review the sentences in a manner that will make the individual know that yes, while the state is not comfortable, while the society is not in approval of the actions that you have carried out, but it is also concerned that you are showing some level of repentance, and therefore you should be granted a pardon. So presidential pardon is a very good way of reintegrating these individuals back to society, who can also be very positively impacting in such society. It's a practice all over the world. However, I was waiting for the however, when search is done, remember that it is a society, so people will have to look at the various pardons, the rationale behind the pardons, and what their sense of justice is concerning the pardon that has been so extended to these individuals or group of persons.
You know, there's this headline on the front page of the Matrix that says, reckless use of pardon undermines justice and emboldens criminality. That's coming from the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar.
The what?
He said, reckless use. The reckless is in quotes.
Yes.
Reckless use of pardon undermines justice, emboldens criminality, says Atiku.
He has his reasons for that position. From his point of view, possibly, I think it's about 179 individuals 175 individuals who were considered under different categories of this presidential pardon. And quite a substantial amount of persons there were linked to when the news first filtered out.
It came out as though just drove.
Yes, people, when the news first filtered out, most persons were commending the act. Of course, there were those who saw it from the political angle, because it's just less than 2 years, as it were, to 2027. And so the thinking is that the president will possibly be reaching out to those who have who can buy him good favor ahead of that time. And then further scrutiny of the list began to bring out stories that are very disturbing, one that are very disconcerting to many Nigerians. And so the former vice president's description that it is a reckless use of the pardon is one that very many people are in sync with. Given the list of individuals that have been said to have been freed for clear-cut criminal act, we still have a lot of persons some persons died from the actions of these persons. A lot of families have their younger ones who were using these particular products, these particular drugs, their lives being cut short or redirected negatively, and they have never recovered. Beside that is the image of the nation internationally for those who were caught while trying to move this out of the country, for which they were arrested, and the rest of it. And it is also very, very sad to know that top kidnap kingpins were said to have been granted pardon while they are serving their jail term for the havoc they have caused on Nigerian people. Those who made the roads unsafe, we are trusting them again to return to the society while we are still battling with some of their own recruits, some of their own foot soldiers who have taken over the job and even escalated it. You are not bringing them, but how are you going to achieve the issue of security in the country with this kind of action? That, of course, would have been the reason of the former vice president saying this is reckless. And I must tell you, I'm in alliance with that school of thought, that the presidential pardons seem to have been taken too far and made a joke of.
You know, ADC also said that the president is redefining what morality should be in that kind of case.
Oh, I've just said it. It is troubling. When you look at the list of those convicted for one drug case or the other, if you look at their number, they constitute almost 40%. of that what's it called? If not, okay, let's say yes, well, those with drugs, those with criminal records, they constitute
other cases.
Other cases, they constituted over what they call it. Those involved in drugs and insecurity, matters of insecurity. They constitute about 40% of that list, and Nigerians honestly do not see their they have not been able to see their sense of contrition, their sense of their contrite state, as it were. It's not as if it was displayed to anybody. Those who went to review, who went to generate that list, apparently were doing it more for political reason than for the purpose of national safety, having them integrated to society.
But the question is, what process does a presidential pardon go through? Because, for example, if the executive power too has to be checked, it means that it has to go through some processes. So should the president just wake up and decide I'm pardoning these numbers of people?
No. Well, we heard the story that it's a council, presidential council, or was it on amnesty that what they call that drew up those lists? There was a council that at College of Men who came together and then looked through the various applications, as it were, that had applied for review of their cases. And these were the ones, I think the story was that about 3,000 or so that they reviewed, and then they came up with this 170 something, which they think have to go these, what's it called, who have to enjoy these various categories of presidential reconsideration of their status in the prisons. But again, it even speaks to the individuals who are in that committee. Beside the president, the president does not have to accept hook, line, and sinker everything that they present to him. Absolutely. He should have also looked at this, some of these names that were reeled up to him and the offenses for which they were convicted. I read an article where someone was even arguing over the pardon or granted posthumously to Herbert Macaulay, noting that the law under which that conviction was carried out is even separate from the law of Nigeria, because that was carried out at a time Nigeria was yet a state, an independent state, and so those laws are British laws which were using to run the colonization era, and the matters for which that conviction was carried out was one that is not one that is it should be taken. However, it is really troubling that we have these kind of things happening in the nation, and then men who should come out and speak, as it were, even when they speak, the system may be one of ignoring them, such that what you say ADC has said, redefinition of what is moral and what is right. We are battling with the issue of the decadence of morality in the social value and moral values in the country, and then we are now having this. To what extent does this kind of pardon inspire Nigerian youths? Every day we are running around arresting young persons for being involved in what is being called Yahoo and the rest of it, and those who possibly are involved in Yahoo Plus, where they have to kill human beings in the very notorious belief that such thing generates money for them. It's not just in this part of the world that this is common, where you think that making money is until you kill somebody and spill the blood of the person, then you now make money out of it. For such persons, as the president telling us now that when such persons have been convicted and put in prison, in the next 3 or 4 years, somebody will come up and say, okay, based on this ideology, you now go to the prison and say, okay, bring all those persons and let me grant them presidential pardon. Of course, it will encourage others to carry out the same act. Some parents who are still mourning the loss of their children by virtue of the act that some persons carried out on these children, and now you want these persons who meted out this dastard act, as it were, on the life of this person to come and start walking the street. It is more political.
Now, what do you think this kind of pardon, as tagged reckless by the former vice president, what kind of image do you think it's going to give Nigeria in the international scene? Because there are lots of already...
If we have seen this, by the time those with very robust justice system look at all of this, and see how that we have made a joke of ourselves. We'll just be a laughing stock internationally. We're a laughing stock, honestly.
Well, whilst we all want, in fact, sometimes I'm wondering, the fight against drugs and all of that seems so fragile now, because it may seem as though after all the efforts that have been put to put a lot of persons behind bar, they could just get presidential pardon just like that.
These persons whom you sent, all they know in their life is this short course to money making in life.
Back there.
They are going to be back. Because the drug world is not one where people just throw away, where they throw away the contacts they already have. They know the level, they know your level of skills in terms of carrying out the ignoble act, which of course among themselves they consider it honorable, and they laud you for doing it. Now these persons will reach out if they don't even go back. These persons will reach out to them, and it's just so embarrassing. Just so embarrassing.
Honestly, we just look forward to better days in the country. And talking about better days, I think part of the moves for better days will be what happens in 2027. And what happens in 2027 begins with who will become the next INEC chairman. So let's talk about the person of Amupiton, the nominee. What do you make of him as a person? Do you see him as that person who's going to be the next INEC chairman, that Nigerians will feel satisfied by the election results eventually?
Again, you go to another very troubling presidential decision. When he seemed to be the only nominee. So the National Assembly has no option, as it were.
But they can reject if they don't want him, and let's have someone else.
Which National Assembly? This one. Headed by headed and by the ally of the president. No. I wouldn't want.
Isn't it the beauty of democracy?
I wouldn't want to believe that you are convinced of what you're saying.
Political parties.
Listen.
Represented.
There have been stories that this same man was among the presidential team that was involved in the tribunal when the other parties were querying the what they call the authenticity of the president's emergence in the last election. This same man was in that team arguing this case. I'm not saying that he is wrong for being there. It is his what they call his profession, and requires that he makes money to take good care of his family. But for Nigerian persons, they have already seen the bias. They've seen through the presidential decision in going to pick such a man. There have been several arguments even before this nomination that somebody who is inside would have been very good, because the president has a deep understanding of what it is inside, has been with what's his name in the last 10 years, and understand the challenges that are there and what they need to do to upgrade it. It will be easier for that person to easily master the various processes and then be able to run it. And so the president surprised everyone, not allowing further discussion on it, and he has redirected Nigerians now to begin to discuss his choice. And who is his choice? A former lawyer of his who defended his office. That man, how unbiased can he be in sitting over the election in 2027? That is one big question Nigerians will have to face.
So, you think he's probably going to be a biased person, or is going to be more controversial?
Controversy is certain from the one. The controversy has started.
But
when people are beginning to question the integrity of the choice, when people are beginning to question how he can be unbiased in handling a matter that he had been biased in defending.
You think his defense was biased?
Defenses are always biased. If you stand on any side of a matter, you are already giving to that side. So that already has shown your bias, because that's clearly defined your leaning. And so that leaning is already seen. This is the president's man coming to head the supposed unbiased umpire. It is impossible to have such a person running the INEC in an unbiased manner as Nigerians would have wanted.
You know, it's just, I think most of the problem would probably be from Nigerians in general. You know why I'm going this way? Because, for example, if you had the right electorates, you have the right people put in power. In the National Assembly, for example, they are not expected to work in uniform. They are expected to have diverse opinions, speak differently, have different reasons why they want something, pass different bills, speak up for the constituents that they represent, and for the party they represent, their people that they represent. But at the end of the day, what do we find? Maybe one-sided voice. Not because they are being marginalized, but because maybe most of them get in there and they never speak again.
You said it, that the Nigerian population, the electorates, should take the blame. These persons do not emerge outside Nigeria. They are Nigerians.
Exactly.
And it is the electorate that chose them. Even though in very many cases, there seem to be some very disturbing tactics deployed by these individuals in their locality to emerge as the choice candidate or winner of that particular electoral process. But it is going to be a very sweeping decision by the Nigerian people to want to have a change as they deploy their thumbprints in the ballots, and then insist that the ballot comes out, that the result of the ballot is reflected in the final outcome. The judiciary that would have been the last hope of the common man, as the cliche is beginning to raise questions even in the minds of many persons who go to seek their interpretation of many of such issues that are of contention. More because the deployment, the use of technicalities, as it were, to make their judgment in some cases, which is obviously one that should have gone the other way, has made a lot of Nigerians to have less confidence in matters that they see very clearly that there may be technicalities that can be used to put the man who has the wherewithal to be able to influence justice for himself or herself. But again, democracy is a process, and as the years go by, the younger generations who are very active on the social media may begin to see more reasons why they should now move from the online to the offline space.
I hope so.
And then when they do that, they can now allow their numbers to reflect and then carry out the things that they can do. This country was shocked when they will have youths from different parts of the country, different ethnic group of different religion, protecting themselves even during prayers when they came out en masse for the NSAS protests. Nigeria never expected that will happen. In fact, the political class never expected that will happen. And you need to see how organized they were in the whole of that process. As much as some persons tried to hijack it, they still were able to conquer it. Thank God for the way the whole thing went. Thank God also for the government at the time who did not deploy. Okay, there are still controversy over, but in Abuja here, we didn't have that case where government deploy what I want to describe as very wicked and notorious tactics to disperse the people. These are young persons who never saw military government. These are young persons who never actually saw how a government was brutal to its citizens. And so while their parents were telling them, no, don't step out, they had reason to come up. So now they have done it from the social media space. They've done it in a way that it is not, what do you call it, part of the electoral process. Let them convert that energy to the thumbprint. They should convert the whole of that energy down to the thumbprint and then make the decision that they think is required at the sub-national level, at the state and even the national level, so that the expected governance systems and benefit that they will have, with the Nigerian people want to have, will be the one that will come up.
Do you think we're going to get there come 2027? Because I know there's more awareness now. I know a lot of people said in 2023 they're going to come out to vote, but we didn't even see that kind of numbers. You know, we thought after 2020 we're going to find more youth coming out in 2023.
The first indicator that there will be larger turnouts is the INEC register. The register gives you an idea of the huge number of persons that are already captured in the system for electoral activities. Of course, we've had cases where some persons may, of course, sick, dead, and all that, but there's still continuous voter registration, which may likely increase the number that is already there. So that is the first indicator that there's going to be a huge number of Nigerians expected to participate. But history has proven that rarely do you get up to 70% of participants in an election from the registration. Most of the elections before now have always been down that way. More so that
but the worry is that the numbers decline every year.
Yeah, more so that technology now captures what it is, what is real. Or like those days when people manufacture number. But right now, technology captures the number of persons who actually registered before they finally come to the to carry the election. So let us hope that it's going to be that way. That the anger being expressed now, the seeming disappointment that people have now, let them go and express it if they are convinced that this process so far is not good for national development. Then they have another 2 years waiting for them to take that decision.
And truly, there's more than enough time to prepare and to get into that, you know, that same spirit of being an electorate. Thank you so much, Osaritin Osadebawe. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me here.
And thank God I didn't murder your name today. All right, viewers, thank you for being a part of the show. I'll see you again tomorrow, and I am Olamide Alhassan. That's bye for now.